Welcome to the first week of Art Unchained, the art and technology event sponsored by Swire Properties, which explores how technology is impacting the creative world from the art industry to everyday consumer products. Welcome, everybody. It's a thrill to be here. I'm Angie Lau. I'm editor-in-chief and founder of Forecast.News. We cover blockchain and emerging technologies that shape our world at the intersection of business, politics, and economy. And now we're going to today include art to that. Just to tell you a little bit more about Art Unchained, it takes place over 2 weeks, these next 2 weeks, and it consists of 2 online forums, of which I'm very happy to be hosting, and immediate art installation at Artistry. The first forum, this one, is about technology and art. And the second forum, next Friday, so I really want you all to be there as well, is about how blockchain is going to impact consumers. But besides the forums, there's a media art installation by a French artist named Patrick Tresset. In fact, you see the artwork right there on your screen now. This artwork called Human Study Number 1, 5 NRP, is 5 robots sketching human sitters in 20-minute sessions. Each robot has been programmed to sketch in a different style, kind of like 5 different artists. And the artwork truly reflects the questions and themes that will be discussed during the web forums, for example. How is technology being used by artists to both create art and sell it? How is technology making it easier to understand and collect art? So that's exactly what we are going to discuss right now, the intersection of art and technology, and most importantly, you. So everyone, if you are ready, so are we. Please help me welcome our panelists right now. First off is Anna Lau. Anna, hello. She's co-founder of Smartify, the world's biggest art app using AI to enrich art appreciation and museum going. And the Smartify app has been downloaded, get this, 2 million times. It's in use right now at the National Gallery, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Louvre, just to name a few of the museums where you can use the app. And I wish we could travel more so that we could actually appreciate it. But there is no doubt that even if you physically can't be there, you can actually appreciate this through the app. And it's really incredible to see. Our next panelist is Andy Elekin, co-founder of Snark Art. This is one of the most prominent and successful businesses selling tokenized digital and traditional artworks using Ethereum. Now, Ethereum, if you know, is one of the blockchain protocols that is the engine behind our next generation of computing. We're going to learn more about this for sure. We'll catch you up. But besides using blockchain to sell artwork, Snark Art has launched 5 projects to demonstrate the creative and artistic potential of that technology. And a recent project was the distribution of limited edition crypto fortune cookies. So we're definitely going to ask Andy about that. So apparently you can open your cookie, read your fortune, or hold on to it and trade it for more later. But once you open that cookie and read your fortune, the cookie token became worthless. So is this art? We're going to ask Andy about it. Joining Anna and Andy is Massimo Sterpi. He is a partner at Gianni Oragoni Grippo Capelli and Partners. Massimo is one of the world's leading experts on art law, especially the legal ramifications of technology on property rights and licensing. And he's also a passionate collector of media art. Massimo, welcome. And last but not least, Joanne Uwe is the co-founder of Art Unchained, and she writes about art, culture, sociology, technology in her newsletter, On My Mind, and created Art Unchained in order to bring more mainstream attention to digital and media art. But before we get this panel started, I do want to say this to you all directly, our audience. Don't forget, this is an interactive conversation. So that means we want to hear from you, our audience. So you can ask the panelists privately and to us through the Q&A in WebEx. And we're going to get those questions flowed through me to our panelists. And all you need to do is make sure to choose host when sending the question to us. And then if you want to make some public comments, please feel free to do so. You can use the chat function and everybody's going to see it. So if everyone is ready, let's begin. It's incredible to be here. Thank you so much. We're so excited to talk about this intersection of art and technology. And Massimo, I want to start with you. Can you give us a general overview of art and tech? some of the technologies and innovations that are currently shaping the future of art.
Yeah, let me start with two quotations that I think will set the tone of the conversation. First one is one that goes back to 2011 by Zach Lieberman. They say that artists are the R&D department of humanity. This is clearly an indication that artists are normally early adopters of any technology, and the latest disruptive technologies are certainly no exception. But I was even more stricken by a very recent quote by Marina Abramovic, the world-famous performer artist, that a few weeks ago declared to launch a VR project that was sold at Christie's, that I believe that art of the future is art without objects. It is pure transmission of energy between the viewer and the artist. I think this is very impressive, and I think it really shows the way, as normally she can do. So the two main trends in art is, one is adoption of technologies, and the second one is a dematerialization. So certainly we start from these two trends. How was this, let's say, this new technology adopted? Of course, there was adoption by the artist using all these tools. I mean, AI, blockchain, robotics. We are seeing robotics in action right now with the project of Patrick Tercet, and our augmented reality, virtual reality. Even smart contracts we'll see, and even biotech in some occasions. But also the art market has adopted many of these technologies. Just to mention a very few examples, or a few fields of, let's say, of usage. For instance, for AI, we can mention art appraisals, or we can mention client relation management, or even exhibition curation, or the checking of authenticity of works, or calculating immediately in matter of seconds the shipping cost of artworks around the world, or even the most recent trend, use it to do key your client action that are requested by anti-money laundering laws. And if we talk instead of blockchain, and we have experts around the table today, of course we have issuance of authenticity certificate, we have proof of chain of title, we have use of cryptocurrencies, we have tokenization, and we'll talk more about that, or creating for digital work what is called digital scarcity. That is making sure that something that can be, in theory, replicated without limits become a property with a number of it, like in the traditional, let's say, brick and mortar world, where physical works had numbers and a limited edition. So you see, there is a wealth of adoption of these new technologies, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to focus on some of them in the rest of the conversation.
It's that notion of dematerialization, that content, instead of on a canvas or in the shape of a sculpture, is actually going to live digitally. I mean, it's our COVID world right now, when we physically can't actually be in the same space together. I mean, we would have been on this panel would have been in person on the stage at Artistry. And so here we are, and yet we're adapting and we're formalizing. A blockchain is no doubt integral to that. We are lucky, in fact, to have one of the leading businesses in art and blockchain space here. Andy, you're doing blockchain in art, but let's get the audience up to speed first here. So audience, you might have heard about blockchain, you might know about it, but just let me take a moment to explain what it is, so that we all know what we're talking about. Essentially, it's accounting or ledger in digital form, just like Massimo was saying about the dematerialization. It is, instead of bookkeeping in book form, it is now digital form, and it's not kept centrally in one place like a book, but it is decentralized, and in fact, it's shared. And in that way, it is immutable. In other words, it cannot be changed. And therein lies the trust, and really a whole new way to record transactions, but it's also opening up new ways to work together, even in art. So Andy, that's what you're doing at Snark Art. Tell us more about what you're doing.
Sure. Hello. Just want to add a little bit about like blockchain definition, that it's more just like a ledger. It's also a global computer. It's a distributed computer, and that what makes it like interesting for art. Like now you can create programmable art. Now that will be like live on blockchain. Now you create something that was not impossible, or that was not possible ever before. And it's like we think about blockchain as of a new medium for artists. And that's like what we're interested most in. And we started about 3 years ago, and with when all these like NFT standards started with project of CryptoPunks and CryptoKitties. I don't know, do you
Okay, I'm
with
going to
this
stop. I'm going to
project?
start right there just to get the audience up to speed. NFT is non-fungible token, so that means it cannot be traded. It is unique. There's only one. You can't trade it for other things. So in the art world, that application is actually really relevant. But please continue.
Yeah, right, yes. And so it started with a project of CryptoPunks. Two guys from Brooklyn came up with 10,000 pictures of punks, and they tokenized and just put it on their website, and everybody could take these pictures for free. And initially, like nobody even like taking these pictures, but then there was an article in New York Post that maybe this is the future of the art. And immediately, like everybody took these pictures and start trading them. And for now, like rarest punks, like you can buy them only maybe for $50,000. And overall, the value of the project is more than $3 million right now. And that's how it all started. These guys became famous, and all NFT standard emerged. And we with my friend were watching this and thought, oh, this might be interesting. There is something. And immediately we start reaching artists that we know, and yes, let's experiment, let's do something. And that's how our first project emerged. We collaborated, and we started the company immediately. And we thought it could be like a good idea to collaborate with established artists and to help them to experiment on blockchain. And yes, in our first project, we collaborated with artist Steve Sussman. It's a famous digital artist. And her most important artwork, she created it 15 years ago. It's a 10-minute video. And she recreated Velasquez Las Meninas with real actors. And this video is in collection of major museums. It's in MoMA, Whitney, it's in Lee Museum in Korea. And artists still owned the last edition and of this video. And what we did, we broke this last edition into 2,000 pieces and tokenized them on blockchain and sold these pieces to artist community. And now this last edition is collectively owned by about 400 people all over the world. And also we created a smart contract, a logic on a blockchain. So if you own one piece, you can borrow the rest of the pieces for 24 hours from the community and recreate the whole video. And next day you can loan your piece to somebody else in the community so they can recreate the whole video. So it's kind of, it's not only collective ownership, it's a collective experience. And like if you don't want to loan your piece, you cannot do this. And like artist is very happy because like her piece got new life. Even if it's in major collections, it's rarely seen. Maybe MoMA takes it out of archives once in 5 years. And now like a community of collectors like do screenings almost every day.
That's really
and
cool.
Also, and then piece becomes like more available because the last auction price of the piece was about $200,000, but like you can buy like a fraction just for $100. So like more people can afford, and like her community can now afford like buy something from her.
But it's that exclusivity of community, right? It's the value of a community that appreciates the art, that gets together. I can borrow the other pieces that I don't have because I'm a part owner. And I want to bring in Joanne here. I mean, you are at the intersection of taking a look at art and culture. I mean, that kind of energy in the community is already very unique in the art world. And to have that kind of digital representation that adds a different layer to culture, to society, to art. I'd love your views here.
I think that blockchain and tokenization can actually inject an element of democratization and collective feeling into art appreciation by investment, as well as appreciation in the manner that Andy just described. I also think that blockchain, without getting into it too deeply, has a Kickstarter style crowd financing function, which can be utilized by, that's actually what Snark Art has done, where a big group of people can actually finance an artwork from the beginning.
Right.
And I think that actually addresses a lot of problems that have been revealed by COVID, where museums and a lot of public cultural institutions are basically getting decimated right now. And this provides an alternative means by which to procure some very important public goods for art and culture.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about what art really means, which is, as Massimo very eloquently said, it is the R&D of humanity. It is how we view ourselves at the cross-section of experience of both the artist and the times. And it's almost a creative, artistic, historical documentation of culture. Andy, I want to get back to you really quick, because that fortune cookie experiment that you're doing, I don't know, it sounds fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit more about this fortune cookie that disappears forever once you open it? I mean, that, of course, that once you eat the cookie, I get it. In real life, once you eat the cookie, it's gone. But you're doing it in a digital way. Tell us more.
Sure, absolutely. Like initially, like there was, we met a poet. And there was a task, like usually like a poet, if you decide to become a poet, you probably will be poor until the end of your days. There is no way to monetize poetry. And like we thought like how we can help. And that's how this project actually emerged. So we created this idea, like 10,000 fortune cookies, digital fortune cookies. Each one is a token on a blockchain. So, and you can acquire this token, like we distribute them for free. You can get this token and you have two options. You can keep it and maybe trade it for later, or you can crack a cookie and destroy a token. But at the moment of opening, AI will create a fortune for you. And this AI was trained by our poet. So it's when you open it in a cookie, it's not that you're just destroying it. It's also an act of creation, a creation of poetry. So like in real time, you're creating a poetry. And like for now, we distribute about 2,000 cookies out of 10,000. So the project started quite recently. And we see that like most of people, they prefer to keep cookies to keep their cookie closed. Like only 20% of cookies are opened at the time. So maybe people like more about money, or maybe they will like wait for like special occasion to open a cookie. We'll see. And also like AI like is trained on like during the project. So like AI gets smarter and smarter within the process. So like there is a chance that you will get like funnier or like more interesting prophecy, like if you open your cookie later.
I like that. And you bring up AI technology, artificial intelligence in the art world. Anna, that's exactly what you're doing at Smartify. And how are you applying artificial intelligence to Smartify and how we engage with art and culture?
Sure. Well, I guess from our side, it's very much what Joanne was talking about in terms of democratization and really trying to bring art to the widest possible audience. So Smartify has been described by the New Scientist as the Shazam and the Spotify of art. So Shazam is that obviously the music recognition app, and Smartify works by identifying artworks using the camera of your smartphone. So you just hold it up in front of an artwork or a sculpture or an architecture, and then it will basically pull in all the information from the museum database into your phone immediately using image recognition technology. We also use AI for personalization. I guess that Spotify reference from that quote. So the idea that the more that you're looking at things, the more we can recommend to you other things that you might enjoy, whether they're nearby to you or, you know, in a collection on the other side of the world. But we're looking for ways basically to use AI in personalization and basically rankings in search.
That's really, really cool. I mean, part of art, though, is also experiencing things that challenge your personal taste, right? Like whether you like it or not, we should sometimes really still see and view art through perhaps the prism of another time or a different cultural background or you know, a different gender of the artist that is opposite to us. Does AI kind of take that into consideration as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, exactly as you say, you know, the part of the AI that we use has to kind of throw in different things and challenge things because it's quite hard. It's less like Spotify in that way. You don't want to just hear the same kind of songs that you always like. You actually want to be challenged. So we definitely work on that, and we do it in partnership also with our museums and the collections who kind of put their works onto Smartify to make sure that obviously we're sharing things in an equal way as well.
You know, and I'm fascinated by that because you must be talking to people just like Joanne there, who's very thoughtful about it. You know, I'm curious, Joanne and Anna, and you know, open it up to everybody on the panel as we think about the technology. You know, it truly is just a tool. It's the humans that define how we're going to use that tool. And so when it comes to art, Joanne, how do you know, I'll begin with you. How do you teach culture to AI? How are we teaching machines to learn about culture if that can even be done?
I don't think we can. I think that at the end of the day, art is eminently human. And basically, machine learning and AI is based on existing received data. And I think that the spark of inspiration is always essentially going to be something that can only be arise in the mind's eye. And for it to be real art and for something to be truly original and revolutionary, it's something that hasn't existed before. So by its very nature, I don't think the AI is ever going to be able to come up with something as beautiful as a genuine, as a groundbreaking masterpiece of human artwork. That's my real view. So it can only get us so far. It can shepherd us to the right places, like the Smartify app. But beyond that, I don't, you know, and I'm glad to have come to that provisional conclusion.
I think
You know,
sorry, go on, Angie.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, I think it's interesting though, because, you know, obviously there are these kind of GANs, generative adversarial networks, that are kind of creating artworks, and probably Massimo can talk about that more. But, you know, the raw material, let's say, of the creative industries is language, imagery, and sound, right? And those materials can be transformed into they can be digitized and converted into data. And then that data can, you know, be put through kind of an AI to manipulate and transform and change. In Smartify, we use it we analyze that data, but there are people who are actually creating things from that it's completely new. So, you know, there is that element of creativity definitely in some AI artworks.
Well, on that note, actually, Massimo is quite involved in this space about these artworks which have been created by AI to mimic the subjective interpretation of genuine human artists. So, Massimo, why don't you take it from there?
Actually, yes, it's the most probably, let's say, topical conversation about this. We have to distinguish the human sparkle and let's say the reproduction of creative activities. A reproduction of creative activities can be done by machine. And actually, I just want to mention, for instance, in music, that a company called Ampere Music recently passed the Turing test. So basically, it was impossible to distinguish if a certain music was done by their own algorithms or by a human. So this gives you already some indication. Anna mentioned GANs, or generative adversarial network, or CANs, which are creative adversarial networks, are let's say, in both cases, a couple of algorithms, or neural networks, to be more precise, working one against the other, one creating randomly images, and which is called the generator, and the second one selecting among those images the one that resemble more human-made. So this interaction generates images that we tend to recognize as artistic images. So they're trying, in better, maybe said, like cheating our perception of these images as artistic images. But that said, I think there is an interesting development that is completely maybe still not so much explored, which is that the cost of creation, if done by machine, goes near to zero. So you just push a button, you can create an endless number of images. And Ahmed El-Gamal, that is this professor turned into a digital artist, recently said in an interview that with the algorithm he created called Icon, he can generate so many images that a potential business model was that this algorithm, this neural network was creating images based on existing images. So very up-to-date images, because it was just a composition of the latest colors, the latest lines, the latest trends. So everything produced seems so much up-to-date. So in theory, he proposed to launch something like a prêt-à-porter collection of artworks that can be updated every 6 months. So imagine common spaces like the hall of a hotel, or the waiting rooms of a dentist. Why do you have to keep artworks forever on the wall? You can change them. You can change them every 6 months. So you see. Even this completely new way of generating works is probably generating a completely different way of enjoying and keeping these artworks. So you see, the evolution is continuous.
Yeah, and keeping it not necessarily on the wall, but experiencing it. And then just noting what Anna was saying is that, it can help, suggest to the audience and to the people, the person appreciating the art, but then it can also be completely iterative, right? Which is what art is, right? Art reflects all of us. Bringing it back to the business side, and Anna and Andy as well, and Massimo, what are the future trends in both AI and blockchain that you think is going to affect your business and the art world more generally speaking? I mean, you both are really all of you are at the forefront of thinking about technology, but the industry is quickly catching up, but still needs to catch up. Where do you think the impact will be?
Oh, let me start maybe. Art, I think, is one of the industries that still is not totally digitized. Like it happened with every other industry, maybe like 15 or 10 years ago. So art is still physical, and it's quickly changing right now. Yeah, and the pandemic actually made a huge push. And it's not about only the way how you sell art, it's about the art itself. Yeah, art becomes digital. Yeah, we see like
Absolutely
a huge inflow, yes.
I would agree with Andy, like it's still early days, I think, in the art sector, although things are changing. I mean, I know, like, the creative industries in general, they're much more fragmented than other industries. You have small production houses, you have independent artists, and so it's harder to have that investment at a large scale, where kind of developers might, get higher salaries in fintech or in energy fields. So in the art sector, I think it has been a little bit slow because it's so fragmented. And actually at the moment, governments are kind of doing work to try to kind of meet that gap. So for example, in the UK, the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre is trying to kind of get the UK government to set up a centre for AI and creative industries to kind of forward that investment on a kind of a national level. And I think those initiatives will definitely help bring it more, particularly from like in terms of public institutions, using AI to do conservation work. How do we look after our works and using it in those ways? So I definitely think that kind of larger level of investment is needed.
Yeah.
Do you think that level of, go ahead, Massimo.
No, I want just to make an example, like the fact that the forthcoming Bucharest Biennale that will be in 2022 will be curated by an algorithm, an artificial intelligence. So this gives you, of course, set the tone for the future interaction between ourselves and machines. You know, machines will be almost trying to be alternatives to human curation, and already a curation program conceived for our galleries has been recently released. So rather than doing the curation and the accrochage yourself, you can have an artificial intelligence helping you to do that.
Well, it also speaks to the necessity of this new way of thinking about curation when we physically can't meet and consult with each other in physical space. COVID-19 has absolutely accelerated the pace of change, and I'm curious if you've noticed that COVID-19 has accelerated the pace of even your business. Andy, Massimo, and Anna, this is for you. Andy, how have you seen COVID-19 impact your business?
Well, we see that like with physical events mostly closed and artists suffering, we see that a lot of artists, they switching into digital. They start produce digital art, and it was like, for us, it was relatively tough to convince a leading artist to start experimenting with digital, with NFTs before the COVID. Now it's super easy. And also, like on the collector's side, we see that the sales of NFTs, the sales of digital art on blockchain, I think we still don't have like this data for 2020, but I think they will like at least they tripled. So there's a huge inflow of collectors and people like trying to get to understand how to store digital art, how to trade digital art, like what artists are there. There's a lot of interest right now.
Yeah. If I can make an...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Massimo.
No, I wanted to make an example about physical interaction with the work for market purposes, because of course there were before like the physical event, the fair, where you were in front of the work and you had a context. You had people talking to you, explaining things to you. You were seeing other works around you, and there was a buzz around the work. And then out of the sudden, the fair becomes digital. So rather than being in a space with people, you are in a white space. There is this digital image on a digital white wall. And actually, when they did this for Art Basel Hong Kong, there was a very negative reaction of the galleries, because they say the setting was the same for everyone, like a digital page with a bench in front and the painting was there. But say, not every work can be shown like that, because it makes every work identical, irrespective of the size, of the technique, and there is no context. You cannot put even another object. So people reacted, and then the fair had to adapt. And now more modern fair or more innovative fair are proposing VR and AR, so augmented reality experiences, where actually you can have access to certain information, to certain details of the work that were even not possible in real life. So even our market is embracing these new technologies to try to adapt to these remote remote interaction with collectors.
That's great. Joanne, you were saying?
Oh, I was going to carry on from, well, both those points. That first, I think COVID could actually bring the art world, the art industry, closer to a tipping point in terms of acceptance of new technologies, just out of necessity, not just because for the first time, art collectors and people who can't go to museums are tuning into digital art fairs as well as just digital artworks, number one, but also, I mean, a lot of attention has been shown on how unsustainable the art fair model is, and that's like been the white hot center of it for so long. But I think it's going to be a question of the factors that the critical hurdles for the adoption of more digital technologies and blockchain, but also all these VR, AR, AI, all of these is going to be just a greater understanding of use of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
So, for example, PayPal now allowing the use of Bitcoin on its system, combined with more legitimate art players. I think this is a big point about one of the obstacles that the industry has faced, the media art industry, is that all too often it's speculative crypto investors who are launching these blockchain art businesses, very different than Snark Art. Snark Art has very legitimate and important world-class artworks that it's tokenizing, and that is the only way to gain legitimacy in the eyes of the art establishment, which revolves around Art Basel. But anyway, my main point being that I think COVID is bringing us much closer to an important inflection point, and so much the better, because in fact, that's why I founded Art Unchained in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, it is the accessibility, and so if you don't have millions of dollars for the world's greatest art to add to your private collection, you go to a museum and you hope that in aggregate that there is a foundation that gives the art experience back to people in a museum experience. But what if these are these new pieces? They still are in the hands of private collectors, but blockchain is one of those ways in which we can bring back accessibility. To your point, right? Digital asset art is often seen as an alternative asset. You buy a piece of art with the potential of the artist and his or her work to gain a greater cultural significance. It rises in value. That's an investment piece. So just putting on that lens, is this a way in which the average person like you and me can appreciate high-end art or just art in general, want to contribute to it? All I can afford is my $20 and I get my fraction of this piece of art. Does that change also the relationship that future generations will have with the art world? I'm curious about what you all think of that.
I think this is actually one of the most central changes that's being brought about through tokenization. In fact, if you go into Snark Art now, you could download a free artwork. And I think that this is an incredible revolutionary disruption. It is that the value of an artwork can go up based purely on the number of people who view it, as opposed to this secret cabal of collectors and curators who set its price. Here we have something which is more akin to YouTube views. The more people download and look at a piece of art, it's a straight relationship where the value of the art just goes up, and you don't need to have physical exclusive possession of the artwork in order for it to appreciate in value, which means that as many people as can see it can have access to it. So I think this is actually one of the most liberating things about blockchain that makes it very exciting for widening the tent of art appreciation and art collection.
Absolutely.
Yes,
hey,
and
reminder to the go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to maybe add
Angie, I'm sorry.
democratization. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the democratization is not only in terms of the price, but it also in terms of the access. Now you can own and have your artwork in your telephone, and you can actually like watch it or like somehow like to be connected, right? Like 24 hours. And this is like, I think this is the major difference.
That's really, really cool. And I want to I wanted to sneak in and say, audience, we want you to be involved in this conversation. And I know that you're curious about it. This is why you're here. You're learning about the technology as it's implemented in art, but there's zero doubt that it's already being implemented within your country, in your companies, within your industries. So it's great that you're here. So please do ask away and go into the chat box and ask the question of the host. So I do encourage you to do that. But Andy, you make a great point. It is it is that evolution of the relationship, and you add a layer of AI technology, and all of a sudden, not only does art reflect the technological innovation, the innovation is also recreating the infrastructure of business, which actually is super important because we used to joke starving artists, right? And yet these are the most revered after their deaths, often the most revered speakers and thinkers of our time, appreciated post-mortem, and yet during their lifetime, they slaved away because they were committed and passionate about their art, and sometimes, often driving them into poverty. Can technology finance passion, support talent in a more accelerated way than maybe in the past?
If I may, actually, I think you touch a very interesting point, because we have also to consider a thing. I recently had a conversation in another conference with David Nimmer, who is the guy that wrote the Bible of copyright, and the discussion was around the copyright being the job law of the future. Why, you say? Because actually everything material will be done by machine. So what work remains for humans? Basically, for humans, what remains is creativity.
Yes. Oh, Massimo, I think you're on mute all of a sudden. Yeah.
I touched something. Yeah, okay. Sorry. I said, most of humans will be dedicated to creative activities, and therefore having new digital tools of distribution, of appreciation, and also of compensation, because as you said, it's very different the public that you have for a $20 million or for a million tokens for $20. So of course, you can have a big public through online showing with this micro contribution. And you are right. The entire world of art market, of art creativity, art appreciation is completely changing.
It's completely changing.
To jump in there as well, like we work with museums a lot, and obviously we all know how museums' business models have been completely decimated this year. Museums rely on physical visitors, on ticketing, on cafe and shop sales, and now of course all of that has disappeared, and most of them don't have any online business models. But I can see that kind of future where actually, like engagement, number of eyeballs on, let's say, the Mona Lisa, that's how we can share profits, because obviously for Smartify, it works across museums. People are using their own phones to just engage with content. So how can there be some sort of kind of universal ticketing that is online, that is distributed, that is helping people to kind of, museums to get paid in new ways rather than just physical visits, buying an independent ticket? I think it's an interesting area as well.
Anna, I mean, think of how we can apply that technology right now in Smartify. If the museum curator could walk around with his or her phone and we could access that private tour. Oh my gosh, I don't have, we can't be in the Louvre right now. We're stuck exactly where we are around the world. And yet, if there was something like this, it would absolutely open it up, not to just people who are physically close to the Louvre, if they're able to actually attend, but around the world. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so there are already hundreds of free tours on Smartify, and looking to the future, I think it is about new types of payment models, distributed payment models, rather than just buying a ticket. I think that kind of measuring engagement and measuring, just kind of popularity, I think it's an interesting idea. Yeah.
All right. It's better than watching YouTube videos all day. That's true. Hey, we've got some questions from the audience. And audience, thank you so much for your questions. Keep it coming. And if you're just sitting there going, oh, I really want to ask that, please just go ahead. We're getting a lot, so we are just going to, I'm just going to open it up to the floor. One person is asking, what are other technological innovations that get more younger people into visiting museums and appreciating art? That's a great question. How do we get the young people?
I was trying to of course, younger people are much more used to interactive experiences. So people where they can comment, they can interact with the experience rather than with the passive experience of going to a museum and just staring to a painting for half an hour. So certainly, creating interactive experiences will be the best way to attract a younger audience.
I think we can definitely, sorry. No, just to jump in one short point, I think we can look at platforms like Twitch, where you're kind of watching a live stream in gaming and commenting along. I think those are really interesting platforms that we could be looking at for kind of, the future of museums.
Yes, and I agree. Gamification of art, I think, is a very important topic, and we see that and hope that the next wave of young artists, will come from video games. There's lots of video games creators that don't think about themselves as artists, but they are, and I think we should expect this. Yeah,
that's actually really cool. Joanne, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think there needs to be more interactivity. I also think that millennials are looking for a lot of authenticity and integrity. I think the days of the artist being walled off by art galleries and art, just like the whole system of art being so opaque, is something that they find quite distasteful. Because actually, when it comes to even brands in general, millennials are very demanding, and they want to know about the people who founded and established these brands. What are their attitudes towards the environment? What are their personal activities, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be no different in the art space. And I think that the more art content that actually brings the artist forward in the experience of discovering their artwork is going to really be assisted by digital technologies. And so, I think that basically gamification and interaction, authenticity, all these tools, these digital tools are going to be critical to unmasking the art world to a new generation of art goers.
We have a question. I think this is an interesting, potentially new path. If you are interested in media art, how do you get started?
Well, I think that one of the great things about COVID is it's taught us all how to appreciate and go to art fairs virtually. So actually, it's not an elitist, intimidating experience as it has always been to go walking around art fair booths and being too scared to go in and look at painting. So I think actually one of the best ways is just first go online. I mean, one of the granddaddy art fair of media art has always been Ars Electronica, so I'd go and visit that. And then I think Snark Art actually is quite I hate to just give you a naked shout out here, Andy, but I actually think that it's fascinating. And there's also free artworks. There's also a new digital art fair. I can't remember, it just launched. But anyway, you could just Google the topic. There's a cornucopia of references and websites that just the average punter can visit and learn a ton from.
And events like this, I mean, artistry is a perfect example of how accessible suddenly the art world is despite COVID, right? So there's a physical art installation that we showed you at the very beginning, but it's also happening in real time. Right now, you can go live. It's being live streamed. We're talking about it, across a digital platform like this. People are engaging with us from their laptops or from their phones. So this is also just an example of how there is a recognition that art must take this form as well. There you go. There's one right there. In terms of career and business, Massimo, I think it's fascinating that, as an attorney, all of a sudden you find yourself in this space. How did that happen?
Actually, for myself, it was quite natural because I'm an IP lawyer, intellectual property, and I have a strong interest in technologies. So at some point, the two things that were completely unrelated at the beginning, that was art and technology, started to go towards the other, and actually they are almost merging. But if I may, I want to elevate this to a cultural level by reminding that the Greek word for art was techne. That is the same basis for the word technology. So in ancient Greece, actually, techne indicated the physical ability to create something. And it was completely irrelevant whether it was artistic or technologic. It was the act of a creativity. And after 2,000 years, we are back to techne, meaning art and technology, So the two things are
Brilliant.
just rejoining after many years.
It's kind of, this is Anna's space. She's in artificial intelligence, but we often talk about reaching singularity. And I, at dinner parties joke that actually we've already achieved singularity. It's us. It's the human. We are singularity. And so is that a machine function or is it an us function, right?
Actually, if I may, and I want to steal all the time, but I totally agree with you. I think we are already much more augmented than we perceive. Actually, our smartphone, our extension of our brain and overall of our memory. Now you don't need to remember by heart so many things. You have everything accessible. So actually humans are becoming augmented, and actually artists are just becoming augmented themselves. This very sterile discussion about artists is when you see these artworks like faceless portraits transcending time of Ahmed El-Gamay. People ask, is this the work of an artist, a human artist, or the work of an algorithm or a neural network? This is a very sterile question. Actually, it's a human. There is still a human behind, the famous human behind the machine. But the human behind the machine and the machine are just interacting, and is the human that becomes so much empowered by the power of the machines. So I think that the singularity point is almost there, but fortunately, the human is still behind.
That's a great way to kind of sum up this session. One last question, and quickly to all of you, as you kind of look into the future as we augment ourselves through the experience of this universal thing called COVID, as we take a look at technology like blockchain and AI and potentially other technologies on the horizon like quantum. What do we ultimately want to say about ourselves in art, and how do we elevate our conversation as humans, right? So I guess the question is, look into the future. How will art be seen and viewed and regarded because of technology?
I'll start. I wanted to say that technology can be a crucial way to reunite and rehumanize art. And I think that it's become very passive in one way. So actually, media art is something which allows the viewer of it to step into the shoes, the mind, the eyes, literally, and potentially of the artist who created the art. So I hope that technology is actually going to bring us closer together. What we have seen in the last 30 years is the art world actually creating more distance and actually a gulf in terms of knowledge and access, which I hope can now be bridged by technology. So I want it to become both itself creatively eminent. It will always be eminently human, but hopefully technology can be this important nexus to draw people together.
Angie? Oh, Anna, please go ahead.
No, just
Anna.
for me, technology, it can really help. It's exactly what Massimo said. It's about increasing the potential of humans, increasing the degrees of freedom of humans. Surely that has to be the role of it. And I think particularly for artists who are at a slightly lower level, they're not in that kind of elite, very small artists of, the top artists in the world, or if we're talking about public institutions, if technology can help bring robust business models where they can sell art if they're independent artists, or where they can show art in a way that is sustainable, then I think that's what I'm looking for from technology.
Fantastic. Andy?
I just wanted to add that technology is just a tool. It's important tool. It's like we use the term augmented creativity a lot. It's kind of it's sometimes technology right now, it helps you to be more creative. It helps you to have like thousands of options instead of two. But curation, like what you are picking, it's still your choice, and it will not change like with the technology. Like nothing, and it will be the same. So in many ways, like technology is important, but like it's still same old art. It's like
It's the creativity function.
exactly.
Massimo?
Yeah.
Massimo?
Yes, I want to mention that, in my opinion, the future is like showing us a path to more active participation of the art lover or the collector into the life of the artwork. You mentioned the value based on number of views. I like enormously the project of Snark Art that permits you to borrow the entire work because you just own a fraction of it, and you have that for yourself and your friends or your viewer for 24 hours. So there are ways of participation that were simply impossible in the physical world. And I think that's exactly where technology will be the most fascinating. Participation, making participation possible for a wider public, and making creativity something that we cannot only watch, but actually participate into.
Well, then this is exactly what we've created today for the past hour because of our audience, because our audience participated, because of the artistry of the intellectual conversation that happened on this platform. We have created a brilliant piece of art for the past hour, of which our participants who've dialed in live from across Hong Kong and across Asia to participate. So I want to thank my co-artists here who have joined us on our panel, and the co-artists who have joined us in our audience. And thank you. This is a collective participatory experience, and we really thank you for it. It is thanks to Swire as well, and artistry. That is an actual artist, Patrick Tresset, and the using the technology to actually have humans participate in the creation of that art. So I want to thank you all for watching our forum. Now, if you've enjoyed this one, I truly hope that you will tune in to next week's event, Blockchain, A Brave New World of Consumerism, featuring speakers from MasterCard and Tracer and De Beers blockchain platform, hosted by yours truly. That event is going to take place at 12:30 on Friday. And of course, you can watch the live stream of the media art installation I was telling you about, called Human Study Number 1, 5 NRP every day from 11:30 to 7:30 by logging on to the artistry section of the Taiku Place website. So to all my co-artists here on this digital panel and my co-artists in the audience, I want to thank you. I'm Angie Lau, Forecast.News editor-in-chief, co-founder and CEO, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, bye everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.